Did you ever tell Jewish jokes yourself?
I never said a Jewish word on the stage in 50 years.
I didn't say a Jewish word, I said a Jewish joke.
No. I might tell you one when the show's over, but I never tell them publicly.
Oh, now this is
I don't regard
hear.
myself as a Jew when I'm publicly performing. I'm an actor. Maybe a bad one, but I'm an actor.
Welcome to Amusing Jews, where we celebrate Jewish contributors and contributions to American popular culture. I'm Jonathan Friedmann.
And I'm Joey Angelfield.
Producer-engineer Mike Tomren is working somewhere behind the scenes. Amusing Jews is a project of Adat Chaverim Congregation for Humanistic Judaism, the Jewish Museum of the American West, and Atheists United Studios. Hey, Joey. Life is a long series of creative projects, some for love and some for money. We need both, and in general, they're available separately. These words of wisdom were scribed by today's guest, a true Renaissance mensch.
We're delighted to talk with Noah Diamond, a Marx Brothers expert and co-host of the Marx Brothers Council Podcast, author, performer, and cartoonist whose books include 400 Years in Manhattan, Love Marches On, a Saga of Broadway, and Gimme a Thrill, the story of I'll Say She Is, the Lost Marx Brothers Musical, and how it was found. His newest project is the limited series podcast, Pintele. Noah, welcome to Amusing Jews.
Hello, guys. Thank you so much for having me. Where has this show been all my life?
On your website, you write, if I'm any one thing, I'm a writer. If I'm any two things, I'm two writers. Care to elaborate?
Sure. If I'm any three things, I'm three writers. If I'm any four things, I'm four writers. I think a more accurate one-word description of what I am is artist. I mean, I think that sort of does more accurately say what and who I am, but it has problems and liabilities in conversation. It feels self-aggrandizing, even though it's not a value judgment to say that something is art. It's just a description. But when you say I'm an artist, people feel like you just said, well, I'm a genius, so that's what I do. It's very similar to the way when you say you're Jewish, people assume that you mean you're religious. That's a lot of what my current project is about. So it's always like, I'm Jewish, but let me tell you all about the specific ways in which I am Jewish. And I guess I'm the same way with presenting myself as an artist or a writer or whatever I choose to say when somebody tries to pin me down.
Yeah, I have similar problems when people ask me what I am. I usually just say, I'm a musicologist because it elicits confusion and no follow-up questions.
Perfect. Yeah, maybe I should take a page from your book. I should, instead of striving for accuracy, I should strive for confusion.
I'm thinking that an elevator pitch is an inherently anti-Jewish idea, you know? I mean, we would want to stop the elevator.
Jews take the stairs.
Beyond writing, you're a performer, cartoonist, graphic designer, filmmaker, podcaster, tour guide, among other things. Is there a through line that connects these eclectic pursuits?
I also make a great hollandaise sauce. You forgot that one. I would say if there is a through line that sometimes connects these things, it would be a specific project. I enjoy wearing a lot of hats, and I have a kind of, for some reason, sort of holistic approach to creativity. Not that I don't like to collaborate with other people. That's also very important. But, I'm just the kind of artist who, if I'm writing a book, I also want to design the cover, or I've joked about myself saying like, oh, I have an idea for a play, and I'll start to write it. I'll get like halfway through scene one and take a break to design the poster and the playbill cover. And I just enjoy all that stuff. And I like to get as immersed as I can in what I'm working on. And when I'm working on a project, partly because it does have to share the schedule with a day job and other responsibilities, it's really important to, inundate myself with it. I listen to music that is connected to the project. I immerse myself in visual art that has some connection to what I'm doing. So I'm really, living and breathing the world of what I'm doing. And that's another reason why, yeah, I tend to wind up doing all these different things. Some of the things on that list have to do with the distinction mentioned earlier, too, about, some for love, some for money. Like being a New York City tour guide, that was something I just did for money. It was my day job sort of intermittently for many years. But, it was my day job because I realized that was a job and I thought, "Oh, that might be a good job for me." And, I have interests and perhaps skills that would fit that job well. So I did that for a long time. And then it eventually became the basis of a one-man show that was produced in New York, and then a book based on the show. And, so often these pursuits tend to come out in different directions at once.
Enjoying the show? Click like and subscribe.
One of the things you're known for is playing Groucho Marx. How did you get involved in that?
It's a lifelong love of the Marx Brothers in general and Groucho in particular. And, I was one of those kids who always wanted to be whatever I was interested in. And at some point in my childhood, being, Luke Skywalker was no longer as appealing as being Groucho Marx. And, from a strangely early age, I was, dressing up as him and painting the mustache on. And, I marched in parades as Groucho and did it in talent shows and things like that. And it always kind of felt like that was one of the things I could do. As an adult in the New York theater, I think there was a Marx Brothers influence on the early political stuff I did. And then when that sort of ran its course and I was trying to figure out what the next thing I was going to do in the theater would be, I just sort of thought, well, there's Groucho, that's on the shelf, and I want to do something with that. I also found myself at that point in my life suddenly like the right age and physical type to be the classic Groucho character. And although I love performing, I make no great claims for myself as a performer. It's kind of the thing I enjoy the most, but I think what I have to offer as a performer is mostly not as special as what I think I can do as a writer and creator. But this one thing of recreating the voice and manner of the Groucho Marx of the 20s and 30s, I thought perhaps I could do very well, and wanted a chance to do it. But one of the things about producing indie theater in New York City is you really don't dare put yourself out there unless you've got something that really deserves attention, because there's so much art in the city screaming for attention all at once. So, you want to do something that feels big and important and ambitious, perhaps even overambitious. Something that when you describe it to people, they feel like they've got to see that. That is a can't miss historic event. So part of that comes from the high pressure system of being an artist in New York. Like, I want to find a showcase to do Groucho, but I don't think I should do, a tribute to Groucho where you put all his old material together and call it a review, because it's been done so well so much. If I'm going to do Groucho, I really need a vehicle for it that would be exciting to people, even those very strange people who are not totally obsessed with the Marx Brothers, might consider it a can't miss theatrical event. So, fortunately, my obsession with the Marx Brothers goes back only slightly farther than my obsession with their first Broadway musical, which was called I'll Say She Is, and which was really a kind of watershed moment in American comedy. For the Marx Brothers, it was the breakthrough from their early vaudeville period to their, pop culture phenomenon years that eventually, thankfully, were captured in a bunch of films. But I'll Say She Is, despite being this epical moment for comedy, sort of fell through the cracks of history. They never made a film of it because 5 years later, I'll Say She Is ran in New York in 1924. And it was 5 years before they were able to make talkies. By that time, they had two more recent and more prestigious Broadway vehicles to adapt. So their first two films were The Coconuts and Animal Crackers. And I'll Say She Is, although it was their greatest success, it oddly evaporated and no complete script or score survived. It's a great enigma. And I thought, well, that if I could figure out some way of making that happen, I could give people their opportunity to see a Broadway musical that hasn't been seen in 100 years. And by the way, I'm going to play Groucho in it.
I want to talk to Mr. Lee. I'm a dramatic actor.
So I see. I'm Mr. Lee.
Well, lend an ear to me.
Can you play a role?
Can I play a role? Do you know who you're looking at?
No.
Caesar's ghost. I'll play any kind of a role.
You will?
I'll eat it up like that. Why, I played a part in Ben-Hur once.
What part did you play, sir?
A girl played the part of Ben.
And you?
I played her.
And so that's what it was. I spent many years, ultimately it was 7 years I spent on this project, researching and restoring the libretto and the songs, and then producing it, first at the Fringe Festival in New York in 2014, and then off-Broadway in 2016. And, it was probably the great experience of my life and probably my great contribution. And really still kind of a shock to me that it happened. I mean, not that I made it happen, but that with a huge army of incredibly dedicated people made it happen. But, you if you're willing to work really hard and go to great sacrifice and invest a tremendous amount of time and energy, um, you really can make dreams come true. Forgive the banality of the language, but it didn't transfer to Broadway or make me rich. But I went from sitting in my apartment and thinking, I do a good Groucho Marx impression, to reading confirmation of that in the New York Times and the New Yorker, and all it cost was my 30s.
What do you think has kept Groucho and the Marx Brothers in the popular culture?
The simple answer, which is probably too simple to really be the answer, but the sort of glib answer, I think, is that they were just so good. I mean, the Marx Brothers at their best, I think, are still untouchable. And when I say their best, I mean their first 5, maybe 6 films. There was just a beautiful alchemy with those brothers. Partly their act is a kind of summary of show business up to them. So it's kind of hard to love comedy and not respond to them, because they are almost an encyclopedia of at least the first half of the 20th century and much of the 19th, regarding comedy. And they just have such a wide array of stuff to offer. I mean, if you're interested in wit and verbal humor, nobody comes close to Groucho Marx at his best. But at the same time, the other two brothers in particular are just the absolute zenith of clowning, of not so much slapstick, which you don't see so much of with the Marx Brothers, but ingenious physical comedy. So I think that's part of it. They were just so damn good.
Yeah, there's obviously a lot of interest from gifted researchers and scholars, too, that I think has kept them around much more than their contemporaries.
It's really true. Yes, the amount of great writing about the Marx Brothers is one of the great tributes to the Marx Brothers. They've attracted the interest of so many other great artists and great writers. And yeah, you could make a long list of books that are about the Marx Brothers, but that are also just great literature as books. And that is definitely a big part of it. And that's also part of why new books about them have pretty consistently come out over the years. And that tends to constantly reignite interest in them. It's sort of always time to think about the Marx Brothers again.
Yeah, this may be another reason, maybe not, but I think Bugs Bunny has something to do with keeping Groucho around.
No question about it. Yeah. Also, a lot of people say Animaniacs got them hooked on the Marx Brothers because there's such a clear connection there. Yeah, they are incredibly influential, and I think it's at the point now where so many generations past the Marx Brothers, their original audience is just not around anymore, and so there's now multiple tiers of comedians and entire schools of comedy that have been deeply influenced by the Marx Brothers without even necessarily knowing it. But it's kind of hard not to be influenced by Groucho, at least through the comedians he influenced.
Outside of the joke about the Jewish neighborhood and the coconuts,
And all along the river, those are all levees. That's the Jewish neighborhood? Well, we'll pass over that. You're a peach, boy.
and the line, "Did someone call me Schnorrer?" in the song "Hello, I Must Be Going" from Animal Crackers.
Did someone call me Schnorrer?
I can't think of other overtly Jewish references in the Marx Brothers movies. Do you see a Jewish subtext in their work?
You're absolutely right. There's not a whole lot of overtly Jewish material. There are a couple others in addition to the ones you mentioned, but they're similarly fleeting, and they never feel like the main point. But, that's just one criteria, specific Jewish references. I think on one hand, there seems to be something very Jewish in the Marxian attitude. And this is most obvious with Groucho for obvious reasons. Chico always played an Italian character. So his Jewishness is kind of wearing another disguise. Although still there, I think, and pretty apparent. And Harpo is, otherworldly. He's almost from another planet, rather than fitting into any human ethnic identity. But Groucho always seemed like a super Jew. He was an unstoppable intellectual athlete, always the smartest person in the room. He does circles around everybody. He's a little man, but he's not a victim. He's not a vulnerable comic type, which of course also has a proud tradition and a proud Jewish tradition. But not Groucho. Groucho is aggressive. It's about effrontery with him. He's a little guy thumbing his nose at the big guy. And there are a lot of moments when on film he seems very Jewish to me for reasons I can't completely explain. Partly it's just the way he sounds. I mean, if you want to know what a first generation Jewish American New Yorker talked like, Groucho, especially in the first two films, is a great record of a dialect and an accent. So that announces his Jewishness very loudly. There's also just something about it. I mean, probably to sum it up in one Yiddish word, it's chutzpah. That was the Groucho gift.
Didn't he begin as a German stereotype originally and sort of evolve into this character that we know?
Yeah, very true. Yeah. The Marxes were German Jews. Their mother was from Germany and their father was from Alsace-Lorraine. And doing German characters, which were confusingly known as Dutch characters, Dutch being the German word for German, was very big in vaudeville. Probably if there's one reason why the Marx Brothers wound up in show business, it's because it was already in the family. Their mother's brother was Al Sheen, who was a famous vaudeville comic. Later on, he became half of the team Gallagher and Sheen, which is one of the few vaudeville teams that's still kind of known today. They had a hit song that people sometimes still will whistle or sing when you mention it. So Uncle Al Sheen was a great influence on them, and he was a Dutch comic who always played this German character. The Marxes, when they first became a comedy act, were doing a school act, which was a popular thing in vaudeville at the time. And, it involved one comedian being the teacher and the other comics being the unruly students. And that's always been a very rich, fertile soil for humor. And so he was an elderly German teacher, and that's how it started. Then, as wartime concerns made German characters far less palatable for American audiences, he shifted to doing the same character, but with a Yiddish accent and as an elderly Jewish character. And this was a change that required almost no adjustment, I mean, a vowel and a consonant here and there, but basically the same thing. And then in the early 1920s, he abandoned the whole immigrant persona and just started doing the first generation New York wise guy that we know from the films.
So like the Marx Brothers, you're a proud secular Jew. How would you define your secular Jewish identity?
I am Jewish, and I'm also a great fan of Jewish comedians. And so it's sort of with me intrinsically, both as perhaps a genetic inheritance, but also as a cultural thing that I've been immersed in and love with all my heart. So, if I lapse into something when performing comedy and I think, oh, I'm doing Sid Caesar right now. It's hard to say how much of that is nature and how much of that is nurture, but it's certainly all there. And I think, you know, from the point of view of comedy performance, as with Groucho, I just think it's there no matter what. I mean, if I play Louis the 16th, it's going to come out a little Jewish. But that also gives you an idea of just what kind of actor I am. But, and I'll say she is, Groucho played Napoleon. But he didn't really play Napoleon, he just dressed as Napoleon. Same mustache, same accent, same character. Um, that was kind of the joke, and I think, from I'll Say She Is and Groucho and the Marx Brothers comes the great Jewish comedy tradition of making things funny simply by making them Jewish, you know? It's Napoleon, but it's a Jewish Napoleon, and now everything about Napoleon is funny. This was particularly a gift to Sid Caesar and the galaxy of geniuses who worked with him, and Mad Magazine, which also had a tendency to just take normal events and normal social phenomena and inject, like fill a syringe with Jewish and just see how funny that makes everything.
Yeah, some Borscht Belt comedy and Yiddish words go a long way.
No doubt about it. Yeah. Yeah, and that is where the other references come up, by the way, in the Marx Brothers films. Every now and then you get a Yiddish word. Did someone call me Schnorr as an example? Or even sometimes it's just a name, which is such a common thing in comedy. Even non-Jewish comedy writers and comedians and humorists kind of know that. If you need a funny name, Moskowitz is better than Williams.
Your latest endeavor is Pintele, a limited series podcast. Could you tell us about that?
Yeah, Pintele is what I've been working on for the last few years. It's been a long gestating thing, and it's a particular challenge, partly because it's more personal than anything I've done before, and partly because it's more Jewish. Um, it's an audio series in 7 chapters. The kind of glib short description of it is that it's an exploration of Jewish identity and the question of what it means to be Jewish. But on the way to trying to answer those questions, of course, I trip all over everything. And so some of it is about personal and family history, my own Jewish background, and how I sort of came to understand that I was Jewish, even though the process of understanding what that really means is ongoing. Part of it is a cultural history of Jewish entertainment in the United States and Jewish comedy and literature. A good deal of it is about religion and the way I've struggled with that, but also, as I said earlier, the problems that can come up when a non-religious modern-day Jewish atheist tries to be proudly Jewish, even while in some way, in a soft, gentle, careful way, sort of rejecting what has always been a large part of Jewish identity and how to make that work. In Pintele Part 3, I recreate a Seder conducted by my great uncle in 1980 something. And it is nothing but the most positive, warm childhood memory. And part of the challenge and part of what this project seeks to address is how do you hang on to that and even perpetuate it and pass it along while still remaining true to yourself and to the way you see the universe? And so it is an attempt to find a way forward, a way to find some continuity and some kind of Jewish practice that works and makes sense to us now. And then a good deal of it is also just fun, just comedy bits and character pieces and music. There's a great deal of music and song in it. A lot of it is about, Irving Berlin and Groucho Marx and Mel Brooks and Woody Allen and all of my Jewish heroes. And it is a completely independent project, and because it's going to be released on podcast platforms, and it's not theater. There's no date on the calendar by which I have to deliver it, whether it's finished or not. And that's part of why I spent a long time saying spring of 2025. And that has come and gone. And, it'll start coming. I'll start releasing these episodes just as soon as they're perfect. But I really am sort of impatient to share this with the world. It's a more it's both more challenging and a little more frightening and more publicly naked than anything I've done before. But maybe for that reason, it sort of feels a little bit more important. And I'm really anxious to see how people like me and people not like me respond to it.
What's the best way for our audience to keep up with what you're doing?
You can go to my website, noahdiamond.com, where there's lots of information and media for projects past, present, and future. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube and Blue Sky. I'm also the host or one of the hosts of the Marx Brothers Council Podcast, which releases a new episode every month. And we're in the 80s now, 80-something episodes. So, and still somehow finding more to say about the Marx Brothers.
Well, thank you so much, Noah, for joining us.
It's been a real pleasure, guys. Thank you.
And to our audience, now back to your regularly scheduled lives.
Amusing Jews is here to amuse you. If you like being amused, go ahead and click like and subscribe.